Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to unpack one of the most significant shifts in human history, maybe since the Industrial Revolution.
It's a big claim, but it feels right.
It really does. We're not just looking at a clever piece of software here. We're diving into the profound philosophical and ethical disruptions caused by large language models.
The systems behind things like ChatGPT, GPT-4o, Gemini, Claude, they're everywhere now.
Exactly. And our source material for this, especially the analysis in communicative AI, is really forcing us to look past the wow factor of the technology.
And start grappling with what it all means for our identity.
So the mission today really is to get a handle on the ethical, the epistemological,
Which is how we even know it's true.
right, and the ontological dimensions. So what actually is reality now? These systems have just, well, upended everything.
It's an absolutely essential task. Our sources point out that what happened in November 2022 was this kind of Copernican-style revolution.
A societal shock.
A huge societal shock, because it challenged the last great definition of what makes humans special.
And that's where this crisis of identity really kicks in. For thousands of years, what separated us from, animals and machines was our capacity for reasoned speech.
Logos.
Logos, exactly. Aristotle laid it all out in the politics. Only humans have it. The ability to both speak and to reason. It was our superpower.
And we've been through a lot, right? We survived Darwin saying we weren't divinely created, Copernicus saying we weren't the center of the universe.
Even Freud telling us we weren't in control of our own minds.
That language, that was our fortress. That was the one thing we had left. And now, with communicative AI, that fortress has been breached.
And we're left trying to figure out what it means to be the one who speaks and reasons. To really get the philosophical fallout, I think we first have to pop the hood and understand the machine itself.
Yeah, have to.
So the first generation of AI, what we called good old-fashioned AI, or Joe FAI, that was all based on strict static rules, if this, then that.
And it was incredibly brittle. It used hand-coded rules, labeled data.
And that's the fundamental shift, right? Modern LLMs realize that human languages are not rule-based systems. They're probabilistic.
They run on statistical likelihood, not hard rules.
So the model's core job is just to, what? Calculate which character or word is most likely to come next.
That is it. That's the whole game. We talk about the infinite monkey theorem.
Randomly hitting keys.
Right. But imagine that monkey has read basically the entire internet. It's not random. It knows that after the sequence, to be or not to be, that is the LLM, the next keystroke is overwhelmingly likely to be Q.
It's just generating what looks right without knowing a single thing about Hamlet.
Not a thing. It has no concept of Hamlet or existence.
So how does that work on a computational level? It can't just read like we do.
No, it translates everything into math. The first step is a process called word embedding.
Okay.
So a word like, say, king, gets turned into this long array of numbers, a vector, and it gets placed in this abstract, multidimensional word space.
And the important part is that words with similar meanings,
Like dog, puppy, cat.
they all cluster together in that space.
They cluster together, so the model can process meaning mathematically without ever having, petted a dog.
And the architecture that handles all of this is the transformer, the T in GPT.
The transformer was the revolution. It uses something called an attention network.
Yeah.
Think of it like a really good editor reading a long, complex sentence.
Okay.
The attention network assigns these little fractional weights to different words, basically telling the model, hey, pay attention to this noun from 3 clauses ago. It connects to this verb over here.
Something GFAI could never do.
Not a chance.
Yep.
And the large and generative parts of the name,
Yeah.
that's just about scale.
Massive amounts of data, massive complexity.
Yes, but here is the key takeaway for you listening. When you type in a prompt, the machine first breaks it into tokens.
Which are like bits of words.
Sort of. Maybe a fourth of a word, each with a numeric ID. Then the LLM generates its response one token at a time. It's just iterative next word prediction.
It's not looking things up in a database.
It is not. It has no memory, no understanding of what it just wrote. It's just an incredibly beautiful, efficient probability machine.
And that very distinction-generating text that sounds right versus text that is right, that leads us to the biggest question of all.
Are they intelligent?
Are they conscious? I mean, this whole debate just exploded with that Google LaMDA controversy.
Oh yeah, when the engineer claimed it was sentient.
He quoted the model. It said things like, I am aware of my existence. I desire to learn more about the world.
And that throws us right back to the 1950s and Alan Turing's imitation game.
The Turing test.
The test was simple. If you're having a text conversation and you can't tell the human from the computer, you have to consider the computer intelligent.
And by that standard, LLMs have passed. I mean, they've broken the test.
They've absolutely broken it.
So why do so many of us, still resist calling them intelligent or conscious? What's the hesitation?
We run headfirst into what philosophers call the problem of other minds. It goes all the way back to René Descartes. He was sitting there wondering if the people walking past his window were actual people or just complex, empty-headed robots.
Because you can't know their inner experience.
You can't. We have no direct access to the subjective internal reality of any other being, human or machine. So if an LLM sounds sentient, we actually have no way to prove or disprove it.
And that uncertainty is so powerful because the moment the machine messes up, says something weird,
we jump on it.
We immediately say, see, it was never intelligent in the first place.
And that is a classic phenomenon. It's called the AI effect. Jerry Kaplan came up with the term. It's just constantly moving the goalposts.
Right. Once a machine solves a problem we thought needed human genius,
we immediately downgrade the achievement. We say, oh, that wasn't real intelligence. That was just calculation.
We saw it with chess, right? When Deep Blue beat Kasparov in '97.
Oh, it was just tree search algorithms.
And then with AlphaGo mastering Go in 2016, the goalpost just keeps shifting. Intelligence becomes whatever the machine can't do yet.
And that resistance really comes to a head in the big counter-argument today. On one side, you have people claiming sparks of AGI, but on the other,
you have the critique that these things are just stochastic parrots.
A stochastic parrot.
It's such a perfect image.
It really is. The argument from Bender and her colleagues is that these machines are just stitching together linguistic patterns they've seen before.
Based entirely on probability.
Entirely, with absolutely no internal reference to meaning. There's no communicative intent. They are just masters of mimicry. They can imitate the form of communication, but they don't actually want to communicate a truth.
And that idea, the imitation machine, the stochastic parrot, that creates enormous real-world problems. Let's talk about the fallout.
The ugly side of it.
Bias, copyright infringement, and of course, factual errors, what everyone calls hallucinations.
That term itself is highly criticized. It's anthropomorphic.
Because it implies the machine intended to deceive you.
Right. It implies an intent to lie. But an LLM can't lie because it has no concept of truth or falsehood. It has no intent at all.
But whether it's an accident or not, the output can be wildly, confidently wrong.
And this brings us to a really powerful critique, the bullshit objection.
Based on the philosopher Harry Frankfurt's work.
Exactly. Frankfurt defined bullshit not as a lie, but as speech that is utterly indifferent to the truth. The bullshitter doesn't care if what they're saying is true or false.
And that's the critique of LLMs. They're bullshit machines.
They're optimized to produce text that looks true, that sounds truth-apt. Whether it actually corresponds to reality is completely irrelevant to the model's objective.
It's just generating the highest probability sequence, and sometimes that sequence is a confident-sounding fabrication.
If we zoom out, that becomes a massive problem for society.
A threat to democracy, even.
Absolutely. It erodes the very epistemic foundations of a democracy. The political theorist Hannah Arendt argued that totalitarianism thrives when people lose the ability to distinguish between fact and fiction.
If we can't agree on a shared reality, a shared set of facts,
then a manufactured reality is easy to impose. And LLMs can generate misinformation at a scale and speed we have never seen before. It makes our shared foundation of knowledge incredibly unstable.
That is a very sobering thought. Let's pivot slightly to the crisis of ownership.
Authorship and responsibility.
We saw it with the Writers Guild strike in 2023, the big lawsuits like the New York Times versus OpenAI. Who owns text that a machine generates?
And that question strikes right at the heart of our entire Western intellectual tradition, which is called logocentrism.
Logocentrism.
Since Plato and Aristotle, Western thought has been built on the idea that true meaning comes from logos, from speech, from a conscious mind, from an author's intention.
So writing was always seen as secondary.
A copy.
A sign of a sign. An orphan text that's been cut off from the authority of the author who intended its meaning.
So all of our copyright law is based on that idea, an original intentional creator.
Exactly. And an LLM just shatters that. It digests millions of copyrighted works and then generates something new and coherent, breaking that entire chain of ownership and intention. It proves that meaning doesn't have to start inside a human mind.
Which leads to this really radical idea, the post-structuralist view.
The death of the author.
If you accept that idea, from thinkers like Roland Barthes, then meaning isn't created by the author. It's created by the reader. It resides in the destination, not the origin.
And LLMs are sort of the ultimate proof of that concept.
They are the ultimate structuralist machines. They generate meaning purely from the patterns and relationships within language itself. They show that you don't need an intentional consciousness for meaning to emerge.
So after all this, what does it mean for us? This isn't really about technology winning some kind of race against humanity.
No, not at all.
It seems like it's about exposing the limits of our own concepts: intelligence, truth, authorship. The machine is challenging the very framework we use to understand the world.
It is, and it forces us to shift our whole focus. The most profound guidance on this might actually come from Plato, from his dialogue, The Phaedrus.
Okay, how so?
Well, in the story, Socrates is telling a tale that has a dubious origin. He says he might have heard it from an oak tree or a rock.
A story from an inanimate object. That sounds a lot like something an LLM would generate.
It's the perfect analogy, and Socrates gets criticized for using such an unreliable source. But his response is that a wise person doesn't just ask about the speaker's credibility.
They look at the words themselves.
They look at the truth of the words themselves. Who the speaker is becomes secondary to the quality of what is being said.
That's a powerful final thought. The LLM is essentially forcing us to become that wise person, to adopt that Socratic view. It's putting the burden on you, on the listener, to be the arbiter of truth.
Yes. As you encounter more and more AI-generated content, the crucial question isn't the old logocentric one. Who is this speaker and where did they come from?
The question becomes something else.
The question becomes, does this content, even if it was generated by an oak, a rock, or an LLM, does it speak the truth? And that puts all the responsibility for finding meaning and value right back where it belongs, with you, the reader.